So the command verb is analyze. So we need to separate information into its components, and we need to identify those characteristics. So what makes Internet of Everything, and what are the characteristics of the various aspects of Internet of Everything? Now, obviously, we can look at that straight away by looking at the pillars and look at the individual parts, which parts of the pillars used and which type of setting and so on. And you can look at it in many other ways, but it's totally up to you how you approach that. But that's just a matter of individual taste as much as anything. And also discuss the pros and cons of the topic and argument, and make reasoned, comments. So basically, we've got a situation in a minute we're going to look at where we're going to produce an article for a voluntary newspaper. So we're going to actually take the individual subject matter, which is Internet of Everything. We're going to break it down. So you might want to break it down just into various 4 columns, or you might want to break it down into many facets, of which you need to look at those individual characteristics, and then you need to actually look at the pros and cons of those characteristics. And who are we looking at them for? Well, we're looking at them here, we're told, for individuals, society, and the environment. So that alone gives you the whole breadth of what we need to do for M1. Now, I've brought this over from the handbook, save swapping over to somewhere else. So the handbook basically tells us this. Not all of it is relevant for yourselves, but I'm giving you the whole lot. So M1 learners are required to analyse, okay, we looked at command verb for that, the global impact that the Internet of Everything has on the individuals, society, and the environment. This is where the individuals comes from. So, okay, this could be an extension to existing criteria. So basically, this is a hint that what you're doing here is you're expanding upon P2. So P2, you may have used headings in P2, and you may have talked about certain aspects of Internet of Everything, but you can expand upon that in M1. And of course, you may want to talk about this, about how with any particular new technology and new, philosophy, that there are, there's a process at which, things seem to go and take off. And we've got, the innovators, and the innovators with the Internet of Things was very much Cisco and possibly IBM. We've got early adopters, and the early adopters here are people like Google and Microsoft, who are coming on board and finding good applications and good uses for Internet of Everything. And companies such as, for example, as Amazon. Amazon have very much staked their manufacturing processes and their distribution processes on Internet of Everything. And then you've got early, majority users and so on. And, you tend to find there's a curve. So people might say, for example, that there seems to be less and less of it involved. There's probably less and less of it being talked about. And that's how these things often happen. So there's a lot of interest at first, a lot of early adopters, a lot of early case studies. People are very interested, but then it becomes more mundane, and particularly in industry. A lot of industry are using Internet of Everything, but not really talking about it as Internet of Everything, just talking about it as part of their daily process of the way they operate. So for M1, we're looking at both the positive and the negative. So if you look ahead at distinction, you will find that it's only looking at the negatives, not to be confused. So we're looking at the positive and the negative implications for both the individual, the society, and the environment. So you need to look at those particular aspects in general, but also anything else you find which is positive and negative. And if you can find individual case studies and what have you, it's great to be able to bring that extra bit of reading into M1. And of course, there are, as always, there's negative aspects. The environment is one of those, particularly which takes an issue with the Internet of Everything, because the Internet of Everything can be often referred to as just a way of the westernized world, dumping its unused gadgets onto the poorer parts of the world. There's argument in both regards. There's argument against that, or against, innovation and how it drives innovation. But that's major degree level really thought. Just keep it simple, just keep to the basics, and think of the simple positives and negatives. the simple impacts on both an important, again, individual, societal, which is society itself, and the environment. I mean, here we've got some simple ideas of positive cost saving which can occur because of Internet of Everything. And you find this particularly with industry, as they adopt these new technologies, they save costs, but they also in many ways are there to provide a better service for the customer. And of course, where you can make yourself more productive, you can also increase revenue, profitability, and enhance the company. And for the individual, it can be enhancing. There's a lot of jobs people do today which are clean, which are safe, which were unthinkable or unknown only a number of years ago. And many of these jobs have come along because of technologies, because of protocols, and because of such things as Internet of Everything. Of course, the environment is one of those areas you have to be extremely careful in, and it can take a very huge knock on. And of course, the environment can take a knock by developing technologies and producing technologies, but not in the westernized world where we use and consume those technologies, but in other parts of the world where they are poorer and they have, greater and higher environmental concerns already, such as China and India and so on, where a lot of these items are made when it comes to devices, but they also are left with a lot of the chemical waste of manufacturing and so on. And companies are having to adopt a more rigorous approach to supervising the manufacturing arms. They may not have items delivered from their own manufacturing plant. They might be made by other companies in other parts of the world, but they need to take responsibility. And you see this with big companies such as Apple, who are now sort of becoming more and more involved in regulating on what goes on in the workplace of the companies that actually produce goods for them. And for the individual, it also has a massive impact. A lot of individuals in certain parts of the world are benefiting, but not everybody is. Other people might be working in environments less sort of what you would prefer to work in yourself. So it's worth a balancing thought about what impact there has been to the individual in particular. And of course, collectively, as a society, we do a lot of things as a society which can be both good and can be bad. And a lot of this comes down to, for example, Internet of Everything and how it is allowing, as part of social media, to have a certain bias in the way people now think. In a certain way, people are motivated and grouped together. So there you have it for M1. Obviously, it doesn't give you a lot of detail in what resource we've been given, particularly in the textbook, but that's because they're not expecting huge quantities, even though this is a merit, because you're analysing and you're looking closer at what you've already presented as part of your P1 and particularly P2. They're looking at that justifying merit grade as being
the report. The scenario which you've been given here is a sample basically suggesting an article. So that again gives you that free rein to look at this using image, using graphics, and to allow the reader to understand using a combination of your own words and those graphical images. Bearing in mind, this also can be combined with the D1 work in just a minute, which is mainly based on an example or particular image, a particular company setting. So read D1 as well and listen to the D1 video. Make sure that you understand what D1's about before you maybe start both. And put M1 first and then expand again even further into D1.